She had beaten Eala before. She knew she could do it again. And for 10 minutes, it looked like she would. Wang came out firing with a depth and aggression that had Eala pinned 2 meters behind the baseline. Deep forehands landing inside the service box. Short balls punished with ruthless approach shots. She broke Eala twice in the opening 3 games and raced to a 3-0 lead. If you tuned in at that moment, you would have thought this was a mismatch. You would have thought Wang was about to bulldoze through a player still finding her feet on clay after a rocky month in Madrid. You would have been completely wrong. Here is what most people watching did not understand about that 3-0 deficit. Eala was not collapsing. She was collecting data. Watch the footage closely and you will see it. Between points, even as she trailed, her eyes tracked the geometry of Wang's shots. Where was the Chinese player serving under pressure? Outside. Always outside to the forehand on first serve, jamming into the body on second serve. Where was she directing her inside-out forehand? Cross-court, aiming for the deep corner. Eala was reading the exam before deciding to answer it. The first breakback arrived courtesy of Wang's own nerves. A double fault at 30-15 opened a crack, and Eala jammed her foot inside it. The Filipina cracked a return that caught the back of the line, and suddenly the hold was gone. 1-3 became 2-3 after one of Eala's cleanest service games of the entire clay season. All first serves finding their spots. For points, no drama, no negotiation. And then the real punishment began. At 3-all, with Wang serving at 15-30, the Chinese player gift-wrapped another double fault. That is a pattern worth naming. Wang Xinyu hits 3.08 double faults per match on average this season. She is a player whose biggest weapon and biggest liability coexist in the same motion. When her toss is consistent and her legs are driving upward, the serve is a cannon. When doubt enters, when an opponent's return game forces her to think too much about placement rather than execution, the toss wanders, the timing fractures, and the ball dumps into the net. Eala understood this. Her return positioning throughout the second half of the opening set was a masterclass in applied pressure. She stood half a step inside the baseline on Wang's second serve, cutting off time, forcing the taller player to aim for smaller margins. It is the same thing Eala does on hard courts. She took that instinct, refined it slightly for the slower surface, and deployed it without apology. From 0-3 down, Eala won 6 of the next 7 games. Think about that. On clay. Against a seeded opponent. In a WTA 1000 tournament. The 20-year-old from Quezon City reeled off games like she was pulling thread from a sweater, and the more she pulled, the more Wang unraveled. The shot that crystallized the set came at 4-3 Eala. She constructed a long rally, 12 shots, each one adding a degree of angle, a fraction of spin, a millimeter of depth, before dropping a feather-touch slice that died 3 inches past the net cord. Wang lurched forward. Eala had already relocated to the opposite corner of the court. The passing shot that followed was a blur of left-handed topspin that kissed the outside of the line. The Pietrangeli crowd, a few thousand Italians who had no national allegiance in this fight, erupted. It was the kind of point that forces strangers to look at each other and say, "Did you see that?" Wang held to make it 4-all. But the psychological transfer was irreversible. In the 9th game, Eala constructed another statement point. A deep, looping topspin ball pushed Wang behind the baseline, and as the Chinese player scrambled backward, Eala charged forward, a rare net approach for her, and finished with a drop volley that landed like a whispered insult. 15-30 on Wang's serve. 2 points from the set. The crowd buzzed with recognition. They sensed what was coming. Eala sealed the set 6-4 with the kind of composed finishing that belonged to someone who had done this 100 times before on this surface. She had not. This was her 5th win on clay all season. And 3 of those 5 had come in the last 6 days. What made the second set genuinely shocking was not that Eala won it. It was how Wang failed to respond. In Auckland, when Eala took the first set 7-5, Wang found another gear. She recalibrated her serve, started painting corners, took time away from Eala with flatter balls hit earlier in the bounce cycle. That version of Wang never appeared in Rome. Part of this is surface. Hard courts reward Wang's game. The ball arrives faster, her height generates angles that are harder to chase, and her serve bounces higher into the returner's body. Clay neutralizes all of it. The ball sits up. The bounce is more predictable. The returner has time to read, set, and attack. And Eala, who has spent the last 18 months training at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, absorbing the clay court philosophy of Tony Nadal himself, knows exactly what to do with that extra time. Part of it is also form. Wang entered Rome having lost 7 of her last 10 main draw matches on tour. An injury layoff in April. A limp exit to Laura Sampson in Madrid. She was not the player who reached the 4th round of the Australian Open in January. She was a player searching for answers on a surface that refuses to give them to anyone who asks politely. At 3-all in the second set, Eala broke the match open. A long rally ended with Wang pushing a backhand into the net. Then Eala held serve with her first delivery, a lefty slider out wide that Wang could only block back to the center of the court, where Eala was already waiting with a forehand that went cross-court and died in the clay before Wang could reach it. 4-3 Eala. Then 5-3 after she attacked Wang's serve with the same suffocating return game that had unraveled the first set. Serving for the match at 5-3, Eala showed something that might have been more impressive than any single shot she hit all day. She showed calm. No desperation. No visible nerves. She served, rallied, waited for the opening, and took it. Match sealed in 1 hour and 26 minutes. 6-4, 6-3. Emphatic. Clean. Complete. Let me put this in context. For months ago, in Auckland, Eala held match point against this same opponent. She went for a bold forehand into the deuce corner. It sailed long by inches. Wang saved that match point, broke Eala's serve, took the second set, and ran away with the third. Eala left Auckland with the taste of something stolen from her. She played 2 hours and 48 minutes that day and walked away with nothing. In Rome, she needed barely half that time and walked away with everything. The difference was not physical. Eala did not gain 20 pounds of muscle or 3 inches of height since January. The difference was architectural. In Auckland, Eala played with the urgency of someone who needed to finish the point immediately. She swung for corners. She took risks that were not demanded by the situation. On that match point, instead of extending the rally against a visibly fatigued Wang, she tried to end it with one shot. It missed, and she never recovered. In Rome, she played like someone who had been taught, specifically, methodically, by coaches who spent decades watching Rafael Nadal construct points on this exact surface, that on clay, you do not end points. You let points end themselves. You create pressure. You add spin. You find depth. You force the error. And then you move on. There is a philosophical shift happening in Eala's game that goes beyond tactics. After her loss to Elise Mertens in Madrid 2 weeks ago, a flat, uninspired 2-6, 1-6 defeat that looked like regression, her coaching team did not panic. They did not overhaul her game. They went back to the training court and worked on feel, on ball control, on movement, on the patience to construct rather than the urgency to destroy. That work showed against Freck in the first round, where Eala bageled the Polish player in the opening set before grinding out a tight 3-setter. And it crystallized against Wang, where even at 0-3 down, even with the memory of Auckland whispering in her ear, Eala refused to force. She trusted the process. She let the clay do what clay does, slow things down, stretch things out, reward the player who can live inside discomfort longer than her opponent. Wang's double faults deserve their own mention. She hit several in critical moments, and while it is easy to call those unforced errors, they were not entirely unforced. Eala's return positioning manufactured those double faults. When you stand a half step inside the baseline on a second serve, you compress the server's margin. You take away the wide angle because you can cover it earlier. You force the server to aim for the tee, which is a smaller target, which increases the probability of a mishit toss, a tentative swing, a ball dying in the net. Eala did not simply benefit from Wang's errors. She created the conditions that produced them. The crowd at Pietrangeli noticed. This was not one of the show courts. This was not where the main stars were playing. But by the middle of the first set, word had spread. People stopped between courts to watch on the overhead screens. Those already in the stadium began responding to Eala's points with genuine enthusiasm, not the polite applause of a tennis audience, but the vocal support of people who had been surprised by quality they did not expect. There is something worth saying about what this win represents beyond the immediate moment. This is Eala's deepest run at the Italian Open. Last year, she lost in the first round to Marta Kostyuk in humiliating fashion, 0-6, 1-6. 12 months later, she has beaten the world number 45 and the world number 33 in consecutive rounds. She now faces a potential third-round match against Elena Rybakina, the world number 2. Whether she wins that match is almost beside the point. She earned the right to play it. On clay. In Rome. After everyone, the rankings, the season results, the historical pattern, suggested she should not be here. Wang walked off the court knowing that her season has reached a genuine crossroads. 15 wins and 11 losses. A ranking that peaked at 30 in February and has drifted downward since. Injuries. Form wobbles. A clay court swing that has produced nothing of substance. She is 24 years old and immensely talented, but talent without form is just potential, and potential has an expiration date on tour. For Eala, this match confirms something that has been building all year through the noise of uneven results and early exits. Her game translates to clay. Not easily, not without struggle, and not without the kind of patience that a 20-year-old does not naturally possess. But it translates. The left-handed topspin that she generates off both wings gets heavier on clay, kicks higher, pulls opponents wider. The return game, always her best asset, becomes even more potent on a surface where the serve arrives with less pace and more predictability. And the tactical intelligence she has absorbed at the Nadal Academy is no longer theoretical. It is operational. She used it in real time, under pressure, against a seeded opponent, and won in straight sets. 1 hour and 26 minutes. Zero drama in the final 3 games. A fist pump at the net, a handshake, and a walk off the court that carried none of the wide-eyed disbelief you sometimes see from young players after an upset. Eala walked off like it was supposed to happen. Like the clay, the crowd, the moment, all of it had been penciled into a plan written somewhere on a practice court in Mallorca. The Italian Open crowd saw something on that May evening. They saw a player arriving. Not arriving in the sense of bursting onto the scene. Eala did that a year ago in Miami.